Hello everybody. It's my wish that you're all well, wherever you are in this beautiful planet of ours, this beautiful planet. It's my wish that today is a good day for you and you're enjoying the gift of life. It's 5:05 p.m, Friday the 21st of November 2014. I'm on my afternoon walk and I'm sitting in a place in a bit of shade, a bit of sun, underneath a whole bunch of gum trees. This is one of my favourite places on the side of a hill. I'm just near a small gully between two hills on the left-hand side of the gully, among the bracken and the gum trees, the birds. And I used to come here and meditate. And sometimes the bugs got a little bit too much. And when there were diseases moving through the kangaroos, I became a little bit concerned that maybe the bug bites were not such a good thing, and I might be at risk of catching whatever the kangaroos were getting. So I stopped meditating here, but from time to time I come back here when the bugs aren't so bad. This is one of those areas in the mountains, and certainly of all the areas I know, one of the areas that remains cool most of the year round and is still quite green, even though the remainder of the mountains are pretty much drying off. This is also the place where I had, I think it was my first conscious contact, I believe, with a Yowie after being told by a group of ETs about their reality, the reality of Bigfoot, Sasquatch, Yowies, and that they were in fact in this range of mountains, and told what I needed to do about how to contact them. So I attempted to do that just telepathically with pure intention, and was sitting here one day and was able to establish that kind of contact, and then heard this strange array of noises, what sounded like knocking on wood, that sort of travelled in a circle around me. That sort of marked the beginning of that kind of relationship, and I haven't pursued it vigorously. I've sort of had doubts at different times, like I did with the ET contact experience, where I wasn't sure what was real and what might not be real. And I tried to be skeptical, as I've tried to be skeptical of lots of things in my other experiences. You know, a healthy kind of skepticism, I guess, a rational skepticism, not too extreme. So I'm not sure what to make of this. I had planned on going up to where I was told they live, and I was told I could go and spend time in that area and they would make themselves known to me. And I haven't done that for various reasons, mostly because the roads were originally very muddy and impassable, and I have to trek into remote country to get there and leave my car, and so all kinds of difficulties with wet roads, and now there's fire risk, so I'm not going to be able to do that for a while. We did have a very unusual experience when I was away from my home. There was something that came and made noises all night long. I think I've spoken about this, from dawn to dusk, and made very strange kind of guttural noises, I guess, and was repeating what sounded like a particular word. And it actually happened at the time. I had forgotten I'd done this. I asked for my friends to come and visit, these Yowie beings, and had gone away to the city, to Melbourne, and they had come apparently looking for me, and I wasn't there to be found, but a friend was staying over looking out for my son, and both of them heard it from dusk till dawn. It kept them awake, and And there were other people that heard it who were staying in tourist homes nearby. They apparently came out and were reacting to it, and nobody could see anything. So I'm keen to come back here and attempt that contact. Of course, it can happen anywhere, but it just felt nice and comfortable here. So I'm not really sure what I'm going to talk about today, maybe a couple of different things. It occurred to me a few minutes ago before I started this that maybe I might talk about how certain ETs connect with groups of people, and I guess I'll keep that brief because I want to talk more about it on the blog and write about it. So I'll just talk about one individual. Some of you will be aware of my Teal'hia friend. I call her a friend because she's the ET I feel closest to. And you'd almost say like a companion or confidant, sort of somebody who's always there. And I've become aware that she has been there right since the beginning of my existence and through different lifetimes. And those of you who heard me talk about the January 19th, 2011 encounter will recall some of the things I said about the Teal'hia having created souls. So I asked her if I could talk about her, and she said, sure, that's fine. And I asked, can I use a different name because I don't feel comfortable using a real name? And she said, yes, you may call me Anamika. And I didn't know anything about that name, but I looked it up immediately, and apparently it's Sanskrit for a lady with no name, which I thought was kind of interesting, given that she's very much somebody who speaks of all things as being God incarnate, and the Teal'hia speak of themselves that way. Although they do have a very strong sense of individuality, they know the essence of what they are, and that they are really God experiencing incarnation. So I want to speak about Anamika and what she's taught me about this experience, both on craft and off craft when I've had conversations with her. And I can't say that this is true for all the different races, but it's certainly true for many of them. So as I understand it, the Teal'hia have been involved in this universe right from the beginning, and were one of the groups who helped to seed this particular universe, and they coexist across many different universes, and of course the universe they began in. And their primary role, as I've tried to describe elsewhere, and I'll make a monologue about it that doesn't have some of the emotional drama that you get on my video when I talked about the creator races. Their primary role has been as creator races, and that's not a term that they use themselves. It's a term that I kind of discovered through trial and error and asking lots of questions about the different races. So essentially the creator races create on many different scales, and they make seed an entire universe and parts of that universe, and continue to create life forms and souls within that universe. But I sort of see it that there are different levels, and some beings are only, or some races are only interested in perhaps the creation of planetary systems, or maybe life on that planet. It's very hard to sort of talk about hierarchy here or more evolved races, although as far as I'm aware the Teal'hia are the oldest that the other races identify. They and the Saronde are both kind of like the sort of mature versions, if you like, but I think the Muad'Dib dudes race are very similar, but I sort of look at the Teal'hia as the most evolved. So they play key roles in all the different levels of creation, if you like. So one of the things they're involved in is the creation of souls, if you like, from God or from Source, and then taking that through life, and guiding it through life and out of life, and then merging back into creation, and maintaining that sense of identity and then losing that sense of identity with full merging. So it seems to me that there are groups of Teal'hia, and this is not true for all Teal'hia because some of them have very specific roles, but there are groups of Teal'hia that work with individuals for particular reasons. And it seems to me that these individuals have particular characteristics. Now, I can't say this 100%, but this is just my perception from the conversations that we've had and the things I've seen on board and the other humans that I've met on board who were in Teal'hia's care. I haven't talked much about the humans that I've met on board, but to give you an example, and then this will help you to understand what I'm talking about. In 2012, in July, I met a lady who was from Western New South Wales in Australia, and she worked with children. She was a healer of sorts and also did distance healing, but she's a very quiet person, middle-aged, not known to anybody, not in the whole UFO movement thing. None of that sort of stuff, doesn't go to conferences. Really kind of keeps to herself very much. And at the same time I met, she was conscious, and I also met a 19-year-old Brazilian boy who was unconscious, and I was told that he would go on to become a great teacher and healer and spiritual leader, if you like, and that one day I would actually meet both of these individuals. So he seemed to have these innate qualities that would lead him down that path, and they were working with helping to develop some of those things. They were also giving him some healing for some injuries he had that might have made his life much more difficult down the track. And so these two people were very much, one was a healer and one was going to be a healer. And then in 2013 I had another encounter with them, and there were other encounters in between all these with the Teal'hia, but during this encounter I met a person who's much closer to where I live, and I've actually tried to find her. I was told not to, but I thought I saw her once and wasn't sure if that was her. And this person was unconscious. She looked like she was asleep, and I was told to interact with her in a certain way, just as myself and the lady who was awake in the previous encounter were asked to do the same thing with this Brazilian boy. And essentially we put our hands on them and said certain things, and we were told those things would be remembered and our voices recognised when the time was ready. So this lady that I last met, she was also a healer of sorts, very fond of animals and very fond of children. So it was kind of obvious to me, I guess, after that the groups of people that I was often being visited with were people who Anamika was working with, but also some others were working with, and they were often healers as such. Now, I'm not really sure if I would call myself a healer. I have various different methods of healing that I feel I can offer, but I don't go out of my way saying I'm a healer and I can do this and that. Although there are times when I thought to myself that's something I would like to do, but my views on healing are pretty different to most people, and certainly a lot different to a lot of the New Age community. And I guess I've always tried to understand how healing actually works. I guess more than anything, certainly through the counselling and psychotherapy work I've done, I've tried to be a healer of the heart and the mind, and a healer of the emotions, if you like. I think my experience in developing as a healer is ongoing. I don't feel ready to go out and put that label on myself. because I need to feel that I've completely passed through my own healing, and as you know, I'm still dealing with the tumours in my body over 7 years later. And, there's still some things that I need to deal with. Obviously, sometimes I get caught in the idea of separation myself, as those of you who heard me tell the tourists who were doing cooey to fuck off the other day. So I don't feel I'm quite at that point where I'm ready to put that label on myself, but I do healing for certain individuals. I've sometimes done it with their knowing and sometimes without their knowing, trying to help where I can. So this is the thing that I guess strikes me about the Teal'hia. They're particularly interested in healers, but this is a very specific thing to Anamika. She seems to work with groups of people who are healers, but I'm not absolutely certain it's the only group of people that she works with. So here's what I wanted to say about what she does. She's very old. I don't, off the top of my head, without looking at my notes, remember exactly how old she is, but she's very old, much older than Dude. And she has a great deal of knowledge and awareness, and time and space mean completely different things to her. As Dude said, there really is no time as we understand it, only space. So she and the Teal'hia have those understandings and those experiential understandings. So she is able to access an individual and an individual's existence through many different lives, just as we would take a deck of cards and pick a card. She could move into a life and interact with it, and then back again, and into a life and interact with it again, back, and so forth. In and out, in, out, in, out. And that would all be associated with all the various incarnations of the one soul. Assuming we use the word soul, I guess that's the best fit for now. So that's typical of how the Teal'hia works. So Anamika would do that kind of thing. So the way that we would build a composite understanding of a human being is very different to how they would do that. They can both have the sequential understanding of time and a more eclectic appreciation of what an individual is outside of time. And in the same sense, they can accumulate huge amounts of knowledge which pale the smartest human being in comparison. I mean, I talked before about Dude being able to remember and quote from any religious text that has been written that he has read, the Bible, the Bhagavad Gita, any of the Buddhist discourses. And it's also because people like him have these incredible memory techniques which involve, as I understand it, kind of like visualizations, but literally going to where the memories are stored. So the Teal'hia function in a similar kind of way, but I'm not sure I'll ever understand it really. So it's not difficult for them to accumulate awareness of many different individuals and to retain that knowledge and to be able to access that knowledge and awareness of the individual's actual life and perceptions at any given time. So Anamika has a group of individuals across about 70 different races throughout what we would think of as the universe that she works with. And there is somewhere in the order, I don't have my notebook here, but somewhere in the order of about 450 individuals there. I think she said on average she works with between 6 and 12 individuals per race. So on this planet, she is working with 6 individuals. So I'm aware of 1, 2, 3, 4, including myself. What I don't know for sure is if those other individuals, the other 3 that I mentioned, are specific to her, or she just happens to do some work with them. But there are 6 individuals that she is closely associated with who would have the same kind of relationship with her that I do. Well, let me rephrase that. Only half of them, so maybe 3 of them, are conscious of that relationship. The others aren't conscious of it, but she is working with them in the same kind of capacity. So, just summarising, about 450 individuals over 70 different races, species, however you want to classify other aliens, and roughly about 70, and about 6 to 12 on average, and on this planet 6. So her particular race has a number of individuals that do this kind of thing, and she did give me a figure, I can't remember, it's in the thousands, not a huge number of individuals that the Teal'hia are working with in this way, and working with individuals that have broad interests. So I guess my interests are broad per se, but I'm interested in spirituality and spiritual development. So I guess recognising the others as healers and myself as a kind of healer sort of fits in that in a loose kind of way, but there would be other things there. So she works with me to help the development of those skills, and I guess me doing this kind of work in trying to educate other people in a way that I would like to imagine is different to the mainstream people with interest in this subject, who sort of do a lot of regurgitating of stuff you've heard before. I guess a lot of her work revolves around guiding me through that and guiding me as I develop in my own life, but it also involves the pragmatic stuff of coming and visiting, and all the times I was visited when I had no consciousness or no recognition, and all the monitoring and assessment that goes on with your body and your mind, your psychological state, and your overall development. And she will have done this in all my other lifetimes, or any others to come. I don't believe there are, but there may be. So she has a significant role in terms of being a kind of, what's a good way to describe it? Well, in one sense, I guess she's like a guide. In another, she is a mentor. In another sense, a really strong support. And in another sense, now this might sound really strange, but because I understand what the Teal'hia, or how the Teal'hia see themselves, I also see her as a connection to the divine, a recognition of, I recognize her as an emanation of the divine, a manifestation of the divine, and feel very much that kind of connection. When I'm with her, it's like you are in the presence of God. And it's the same with all the Teal'hia. The sense of unconditional love is quite overpowering. And in fact, it's so overpowering to some people that they interpret it another way completely. I guess they're very frightened and overwhelmed by it. So they have a very different understanding of it. And I talked before about the developmental continuum that goes on with the contact experience. So that's it in a nutshell. She works with a small group of humans on Earth. She will observe many different humans for different reasons, as their people will. They'll move among us unseen. And she will try to work with particular individuals. And I'm not really sure. I think there are some individuals that may be catalysts for a greater growth in consciousness. And there are other individuals that are just doing their own thing, just moving through the world as kind souls and creating these positive ripples that go out and create good. And I think some of the ladies that I've met who are healers, who are kind of a little bit shy, if you like, and withdrawn, they're doing that kind of work quietly and nobody knows they're doing it. And then there are other people like this young boy who will become far more widely known one day, who are creating much bigger ripples. So I guess maybe every Teal'hia is different in the sense they have their own individual preferences, but she's always said to me that she's always been interested in knowing and in bringing what she knows to others, and in knowing God and helping others to know God and to know the love of God. So I guess that's kind of the essence of her work. The fact that she gave me a name is kind of anonymous, really. There's no ego with these individuals, with any of the Teal'hia. There's no, well, ego in one sense, that there's an acknowledgement that yes, they're individual, but they also primarily see themselves as God incarnate, as not separate from anything. And they willingly would give up their lives because of that, if harm came to another human being even. But in a sense, they're very selfless, and they really ultimately care about awakening the universe to what it really is, helping God to know itself, I guess you would say. So different Teal'hia, as I said, work with different groups of people, and some work with people who are highly technical, mathematicians and physicians, physicists and physicians as well, medical researchers and so on, and they have those technical interests. But the thing you need to understand about the Teal'hia is they're kind of like a jack of all trades. All of them have highly developed levels of knowledge and can readily talk with the most intelligent of our people about any concept. But they have particular specialties and interests, if you like. So some of them will be interested in cultivating healing abilities in others and teaching that. Some will be interested in helping others to learn about the nature of reality through things like mathematics and physics and some higher concepts that they have. But all of them can talk readily about these subjects, or take on. Imagine it's like we each have a folio of our interests, and they could swap with another person's folio and take that on. But because they are also individuals, they have these preferences and things they are interested in helping to see cultivated in the universe, so they take those on. But I think that there are Teal'hia who kind of remain, if you like, a jack of all trades, just as there are humans that are like that. And the vast majority become specialists, if you like, in this way. There's one group of Teal'hia, I'm not sure if I mentioned them on my blog, but their primary role is in helping to grow sentient craft. And within that, there is another group of Teal'hia who are associated with individual craft throughout their craft's lifetime, even if that craft, for want of a better word, by our standards is immortal. If that, their craft can choose to die, the long-living ones. Others have short-term lives, as I've talked about. So those specific individuals will be involved with that craft. ad infinitum. It's a particular bond they have. So that the Teal'hia take the business of being creators very, very seriously. They don't shirk responsibilities. They feel an inherent responsibility to the cosmos, which includes all of what we might think of as universes, and ultimately to God, which they see themselves as an incarnation of God. And I guess if anything, they taught me to really understand that concept better. So that's all for now. I don't know if I'll be talking about anything after. I'm going to continue my walk, and if a thought pops up that I think is worth pursuing, I'll talk about it. Otherwise, I'll let you listen to this kookaburra. Well, I've just walked another half a K and thought of something that might be worth talking about. Recently, I think I might have mentioned this, I met a cousin I hadn't seen for a long time who had a fall when he was drunk and got an acquired brain injury, or what they call in America traumatic brain injury, TBI, ABI. And in talking to he and his family, it was really clear to me that there was a realignment of values. His dad continues to be a heavy drinker, but the two boys in the family basically stopped drinking and they were heavy drinkers. And he said to me, if that hadn't happened, I might have ended up killed or killing somebody else. You know, like drink driving and so on. And I guess it's sort of obvious to me that sometimes these traumatic things happen that shuffle life a little bit and realign us with a healthier direction. All part of the path of the soul, which I guess in one sense we can say is a pathless path, but even the pathless path is a path. Try saying that one when you're drunk. The pathless path is still a path, even when it is not a path. It is the pathless path, which is a path. Now I'm crapping on. So I had the experience of meeting a lot of people who had acquired injuries, one form or another, mostly ABI, and people who had cancer and all the rest of it. And often I encountered that same theme, that they seemed to think that whatever had happened to them was for the better. And I felt the same way with my own experience with tumours and losing my kidney. I sort of saw it, as I've said before, as a gift and a teacher, a real opportunity to seize life. So we have these things that enter our life and kick us up the arse and change the direction of our path, at least the perceived path. And, excuse me, just got an itch. A few bugs around. And it made me sort of conscious as I was, over the years, becoming aware of this theme of how this happens in all kinds of systems. Sometimes it happens in the family unit where somebody leaves, and even though it's difficult often for children, ultimately it shapes who they become, and they may be healthier for it, even though there's a period of turbulence and things falling off the rails. And sometimes a partner becomes healthier for it. But it also happens in societies where shit hits the fan and you have a combination of crises, as we're currently experiencing, and things collapse. and then they start again in perhaps a healthier way. And sometimes that's brought about by internal crises, and sometimes maybe we could think of them as external crises, such as celestial events like major solar flares and meteorite impacts and so on. Ooh, that was interesting. A small bird about 6 inches long just swooped up to the branch above me and took that cicada. You're hearing these dying sounds. I think he's dead. Yeah, I saw the bird swoop up, swoop down, and the cicada was in his beak. Big beak for a little bird. I don't know if you heard that, but it was quite poignant actually, especially in view of what I'm talking about. So on the 7th of November the first cicadas started hatching, and I was outside where I recorded today's earlier monologue, and I came across what we call a greengrocer, a green, beautiful green cicada with golden eyes, a triad of three three golden spots on the top, which are used for looking in infrared. And he was on his back beating his wings. I turned him upright, and he had obviously been on his first flight and landed, and put him on a bush. And next day saw a black one, and I've heard a couple in the evenings at night time. I don't know if it'll be like the wild cicada year we had last year, where it was like that for months on end. I'll play some of those recordings one day, and I have a video of cicadas flashing in infrared. It's on the end of my video about the rods debunked, but you can't really see it very well. I have to try and find another way to render it. Unfortunately, the renderings I do aren't very good because of my computer, and then they don't upload the same quality. So I record in what I think is good quality, and then it turns out shit. So the cicadas may come back again in those kind of numbers, but I don't think they will. So the first ones are out, and that one's had a brief life. I saw one yesterday getting torn apart by the magpies, and all the babies were calling for a piece. I love cicadas. In Chinese mythology, I think they're a sign of rebirth, but at the moment they're a sign of getting torn apart and eaten. In front of me there is a small bird. I don't quite know if it's the same bird, and it's a tree hopper of sorts. It hops up a tree against the pull of gravity, collecting bugs, and spends most of its life doing that. And that bird is in a tree maybe about 20 metres from where the other one landed. He's hopping up the tree, literally hopping up, and looking under bark and in holes. So it happens in societies, and it happens in family systems, and it could be brought about from an addictive behaviour as well, or an injury. In the case of my cousin, his brain injury utterly transformed his brother, who is now struggling emotionally with a sense of being able to cope in the world without this fear of being extinguished at any moment. So that's reshaping him and his path. So we have these things which happen, and we don't see them coming. We like to imagine that life is predictable, and it's not. As I've said before, everything is uncertain. I continue to have that pointed out to me from Dude and Karnatek. Often they reflect one another, but in a different way. And as I was going through learning about this and seeing it, I was also aware of an idea. I think I'm not sure when it dates from, maybe the 60s or the 70s, but I first came across it when I was 1990 or 91. I did a presentation at university in my science degree on what happened to the dinosaurs, and at that stage I hadn't heard anything about meteorite impacts, and so I was studying all of these research papers on it, and they were looking at all the molten glass that had been created and how did that happen. And I don't know if there was things about the crater in the Yukon Peninsula at that stage. I'm not sure. It's a long time ago. Anyway, I presented this, and the head professor of the faculty came up and said I'd never heard that idea before, and so everybody was sort of interested in it. So I did a lot more research just for myself, and of course I don't know how widespread knowledge of that was back then. I just know in my own sheltered world back then people weren't familiar with it, and I was the person that was always trying to push the envelope. So I also had the opportunity to talk to a mathematician at the time who was teaching me statistics. He was a very unusual guy, very interesting guy. His wife was a ballerina. He was interested in everything, the arts and so on. And I was very much big into chaos theory and I think complexity theory at that stage, which was the new theory. And he said, they're nothing, they're all just fads, you know. We've seen the likes of that come and go before, and he introduced me to catastrophe theory. And catastrophe theory, I since learnt then, was sort of all about this idea of, I think one of the concepts they have is punctuated equilibrium. So in other words, there is this sort of state that things are moving through, and then a punctuation, a dramatic change, and then a new equilibrium. I've got to stop. There's a grey wallaby, a swamp wallaby, looking at me. He's about 40 metres away with a very distended pouch that's on the floor. A very overweight baby in there with a tail hanging out, and she, I should say, is checking me out. A little grey face and orange eyebrows and orange ears. And she's on the path, and I often see them here, and they get a bit uncomfortable with people. She'll probably jump off soon, so I'll just move slowly. So I'm learning all about punctuated equilibrium and how systems go through these dramatic changes. And I suppose the equivalent in chaos theory was bifurcations. Things get to a point where there is a change of direction, and picture a tree. The tree has forks, you know, one left, one right kind of thing, and from that certain level of complexity unfolds. And we could get technical on it, but just leave it at that for now. But it occurred to me that looking at these bifurcations or catastrophe theory, that catastrophe was playing a significant role in the evolution of lots of different things, from human civilizations to human systems within that civilization, to family systems, to the nature of warfare and mathematics and economic systems. You name it, it's there, and you can integrate catastrophe theory nicely into complexity and chaos theory, point theory and things like this. Hello, I can see you. I'm now about half that distance away, and she's licking her paws. Oh, there she goes. She's decided to hop up. This little white spot on her tail. Somehow that heavy pouch picked up and looked a lot more comfortable than it looked when she was standing still. She's just hopped on a log, and she's a very long log, and she's looking back at me. Sometimes when I'm here, the sun is coming at me, and between a hill on the right and a very steep valley on the left where there has been a landslide and it's full of bracken and trees. And on the right the sun is coming through, and sometimes when I walk through here the deer are moving up the hill and they're looking at me, and sometimes they're curious and they're coming towards me, and sometimes they're running away. Occasionally I come across some emus on the path, some kangaroos. It's a very quiet area except for the birds. Maybe I might come across a lizard from time to time too. I try to go slowly through here. I like this area, although walking up the other way is really tough. I'm actually walking, what I didn't tell you is I walked up a hill, stopped at the top, and since walked down this hill, which is maybe on a 60-degree angle. It's punctuated with some little flat areas in 3 or 4 spots. So I'm just looking. I can't see any other wallabies or deer at the moment, except our little friend who's looking at me. I'll just walk past and I'll continue talking. Hello, girl. How you doing? Hey? How's that little bubba? And she's hopped away. Got about 5 metres away before she hopped. She's gone about halfway up the hill. The hill goes about, I don't know, maybe 70 metres. Seagull. Beautiful animals. She's looking at me again. Her eyes were shining in the sun. As I'm looking up there where the sun is and where she is, she's just sort of in front of the sun, and cobwebs are shining in the sun between all the bracken fern and the trees. You can see some larger cobwebs, spider webs. There's sort of rainbow sheen. Off she hops. She's hopping up towards the ridge of the hill. So when we look at life, I mean, we can put theories and morals and metaphors on things, and we can call life a path or a pathless path or a pathless path, which is a path. We can say that it's informed, like, kind of, it models itself like catastrophe theory or chaos or complexity theory. We can do all these things. They're all just ideas at the end of the day. But it's interesting to me that we often have catastrophes reshape things, and we think of catastrophe as a bad thing, a really bad thing. At the moment, we had significant fires here last year. I'm looking at more significant fires this year, perhaps a worse year, and tourism levels are down. Whoa! That's good for me. Oh, less people the better. Of course, the businesses aren't very happy about that. We have a lot of investors here who live elsewhere, who don't care for community, who just care for profit. Even though it's a small community, there's less than 200 of us here, but a hell of a lot of people. Oh, goats on the run. Hell of a lot of people who are here to make money. The goats I told you about the other day are ahead of me on the left of the path. I've just come to a fork. A large black one and a large black and white one, and I suspect the babies are just in front of them. They had 2 little black babies. Kids are usually playing around, either leading the way or getting stuck behind. So, you know, fire reshaped the way things are here. In previous years we had landslides that nobody anticipated, although I think I mentioned before, I talked about that possibility before they happened. And hopefully, I don't know how many people have woken up to it, but it's obvious to me now that they're a natural part of this landscape and they reshape it continually. But what seems bad often brings good and sort of shapes the contour of how things are, shapes the path that lay ahead. And sometimes the catastrophes that we take as being absolutely devastating are the things that were necessary on our path. And sometimes even the worst possible thing, such as the death of a loved one. I can't possibly imagine worst possible kind of deaths, how they feel. But I know, intrinsically I feel this sense that everything happens for a reason, much as I wouldn't wish certain things upon myself or people I love or upon you. I wonder then whether you've had catastrophic events in your life, or you've seen catastrophes that actually reshaped the direction of something, so that things turned out worse or better, or helped things to develop, or helped you or others to develop. I'd be curious to hear those stories. Maybe in a way, we're constantly caught in this catastrophic living. The nature of life is catastrophe. Those sounds you can hear are some very large male kangaroos hopping through rushes and walking off a muddy area of the track. Hey big boy, how you doing? I have a kangaroo who's just standing up, but not standing up all the way, and he's about 4 foot standing up. He's got hands my size. He's scratching his left leg with his right hand. And if he stood up, you'd probably see that he was about 6 foot tall, and he's built bigger than I am. Hey big boy. See if I can go over to him. Not too close. Hey big boy. I'm not going to hurt you. Hey big boy, say hi to Brooklyn, and Norway, and Sweden, and California. He's about 5 foot away. He was a bit uncomfortable with me, so I'm going to leave him in peace. He has green all over his whiskers at the moment from the grass he's been eating, and you're going to laugh at this. His testicles are hanging in the sun behind him like 2 giant pearls in a fluffy bag. Oh, what a view. He doesn't care, neither do I. I'm quite sure we humans would look just as funny if I was strutting around in my birthday suit instead of in my jeans. So I'm about to come out of the bush. So I guess I try to, what do I try to do? I try to see life through many different perspectives, and I try to see that what seems like it's bad is good, and what seems to be good sometimes is not so good. Try to get a perspective, look back on things, anticipate how things might be, see how things are. Often sort of turn things around to get different perspectives. So I've just come out, and down to my right is what looks like a single brown-ish deer. A couple of kangaroos nearby it. And on my left, about 50 kangaroos grazing around the reeds of the swamp, which is now dry. The sun is still quite high, maybe about 10 degrees above the horizon, and I can barely see the mountains for the haze. You can see lots and lots of insects shining in the light, and beams of light casting down, cutting down through the valleys where the landslides have taken place, and single streams of spider silk floating in the air in every kinds of direction, all kinds of directions, up, down, left, right, fast, slow. What look like, some kind of seed head floating in the air, lots of those floating, drifting wings beating, but I can't see any bodies. On my left, the highest peak in the mountains. Magpie among the kangaroos. 2 magpies actually, foraging for food. One of them just flying a little bit further on. A few kangaroos hopping on the right. Shadows moving between the little forest and the old growth forest on the right. I think I see a couple of emus moving at the end there. And behind me, the mountains beautifully illuminated. A peak behind me kind of has that look of a face with a big nose leaning to the left, and where its eye is looks like another face with a big nose. Or you might say it looks like a rat. Yeah, this is our human penchant for seeing faces that Dude said was our unique quality. It's one of the things that was unique about us in all this galaxy. I don't know about other galaxies, certainly this one, that's what he said. And up there I can see big rock overhangs illuminated by the sun, some deep shadows where the rocks jut out. 2 sets of smaller mountains in front of me. I know there are valleys behind, I just described one of them before. 3 large mountains behind me, including the face mountain. I'm going to keep walking and then round it up because I don't think I have anything else to talk about. Oh, just a quick bit of self-interest. I've started a fundraiser campaign to raise $1,000 to help me do a couple of things. Actually, one, I've got to buy a new fridge. It's been falling apart over the last decade and it's stopped working with my tumours. Disability doesn't give you a lot of money. So I need to raise some of that money to get a new fridge because the handles falling off. It's taped together, that holds the fridge together, black tape, and the internal drawers are cracked and we have all kinds of accidents on a regular basis. Milk falling out, juice falling out, meat falling out, you name it. My son or I, one or the other. And I'd also like to as you know, I've now got the Something Monologues hosted on Podbean. I'd like to get a better hosting level there so that I can post a couple of these, well, as many as I want a month. At the moment I'm sort of limited to 1 or 2. And I'd like to get the Global ET Contact Research Network hosted properly, and still exploring the right medium there. I found it quite frustrating actually. I want something that does a lot of the work for me so it's not so difficult. And of course I'm keen to pursue the ET&I Contact series, and I've got to pay for hosting for that. I've got to get my car serviced because it's getting close to a big service. I've got to get the thing called a timing belt replaced soon. It's about $1,000 to get that done. That's the service after. Yeah, so a few things anyway. So if you can help in any way, even $1, it's all appreciated, and I'll continue doing what I'm doing here and pursuing my projects and my film. I forgot to mention that before I die, my documentary. It might give me a little bit of money to do some travel and interview some of the Aboriginal folk that I've been meaning to catch up with up north. Might be able to do something monologues with them too. They're great folks up there. So any way you can help me, it's appreciated, and I'll continue giving as much as I can, and hopefully we'll continue having this sort of two-way dialogue around all the kinds of things that I talk about. If you ever have any suggestions, feel free to make them. Can't always guarantee I'll take them on board, but I'll listen to everything, and I'll continue to try and be as supportive of you as you have been of me. So you can see the donation thing there on the last blog post, and I'll have some regular updates on that, whether I hit the 1,000 and where I'm at, and you can see the donate text on the right hand top of the page. So anyway, that's my little plug for now. That's the only plugging I'll do. Hopefully. I feel kind of a bit selfish asking for help, but it's not easy when you've had to put your working life on hold and settle for a disability pension. Anyway, I'm quite confident I'll make a full recovery at some point and no longer depend on any other help. So my intention is certainly to do as much as I can and help other people do some of that healing work that I've talked about, and finish some of the books that I've been meaning to get published for the last 20 odd years. So I'm at the start of the little forest. There's 3 deer just opposite me, about 50 metres away. They're looking to go up for one of the game trails through the bracken up the hill. About 30 kangaroos here. I didn't realise there were so many of them. So I'm going to say goodbye now. I think the wind's going to be a bit strong down here. I do hope that it hasn't been a problem on this walk. Unfortunately, I can't hear it. Even if I had headphones in, I can't hear what the volume is like. I will try to avoid the wind where I can, but as I've said, this is not meant to be a professional effort. This is meant to be as imperfect as possible. It's just what happens when I take my iPod on a walk, or when I start it up at home and I start talking about something. Thanks again for listening to another The Something monologue. Until next time, take care and have a great life. Bye for now.